This last month has been pretty hectic for Quetzal, my pixel art platformer. I received a lot of positive feedback from you guys after the last devlog, which gave me a lot to consider, remove, and add, while also trying to maintain my own sanity and keep the game spirit intact. As I already mentioned, I am working a full-time job as a software engineer, which takes up most of my day, so this game's development motto is going to be efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. In this devlog, we're going to go over how I'm building functionality in a way that makes sense with the backstory I've started to write. But how can I do so without allowing the project to become a dump of useless mechanics? Really, who knows? Let's figure it out together as we go along. So exactly what have I been up to this last month? As I briefly mentioned in the last devlog, I had been contemplating the possibility of using vector art for the game's visual design, but ultimately decided against it. After exploring the vector art option into more detail, I had to consider the trade-offs. Realistically, switching to vector art would mean delaying the progression of the game. I also started to grow fond of my own pixel art. It's something I built a long time ago and I want to see it through the end. I also spent quite a bit of time revisiting the palette. I think I finally found one that I'm happy with, to which I have added additional colors. Since there's some kind of relationship between the main character and a Quetzal bird, I wanted his colors to be really distinctive and similar to it. Oh, and I also changed the tiles, which have really given the game a level up. I'm using a slightly modified version of these lovely sprites I found on itch.io. Another thing you might have noticed is the presence of outlines in the game. This was a hard decision for me. Back in the day, when I started Quetzal, I was a big fan of pixel artists like Nostalgia Tree, and their lack of outlines was a huge inspiration for me. They reminded me of the feeling I got when first playing Shadow of the Colossus, another favorite of mine. However, as Quetzal grows, it's becoming less introspective and instead becoming more whimsical and cartoony, which I think fits better with the gameplay. You'll also notice that the camera is much further away from the character. I want to add a lot of chaos to the game, so it's essential that the player has a better view of what's going on around them. There's some weird jittering going on with the smoothing option, but that's a problem for future me. If you have any idea why this is happening, please let me know to save future me some time. As for the gameplay, I added some changes that are finally starting to make this project feel like an actual game. I added a heads-up display to show the character's health and stamina. I went through a few iterations and finally settled on this one. Since there's a lot of movement involved in the gameplay, the stamina will serve as a limiting factor to the player. They'll have to learn to manage the remaining stamina in order to plan out their movements, as a single step could be deadly. Right after jumping, there's a small time window in which the player can press jump again and perform a double jump, at the cost of some stamina. I added a slight screen shake effect when performing a double jump to provide feedback and make the movement feel more impactful, letting the player know that it was a powerful ability that made them spend stamina. In this last sprint, I've modified the attack combo quite a bit. Before, the player could only perform his attack combo while grounded, and it always had the same routine: punch, swipe, and dash. It was painful to let go of this, as I really liked how the effects and animations turned out, but they felt a bit out of place with the new direction we're going with. In the new version, there are only 2 attacks, which actually do the same thing. They are both swipes with fewer frames, to provide more instant feedback to the player. Again, this choice makes the game more aligned with the fast-paced feel I want the gameplay to have, even though my favorite games of all time have really long wind-up attack times. The only differences between the swipes are the character animation and the effect direction, just to have a slight visual variation. However, the most important change in the attack patterns is that now the player can also attack while in the air. This is very important, since the main way to regain stamina will be breaking these weird radioactive big boulders while in the air. My plan is to add many breakable objects, some of which will have this radioactive effect, and will therefore award the player with stamina when broken. These will be floating in the air, as if possessed by strange nuclear ghosts. I also made the hard decision of letting go of the stealth and stab mechanic. Even though it was a favorite of mine, I don't see how it currently fits into the gameplay. I will keep it in my mind just in case I see a situation in which I can use it, as I think it feels really nice. As an introduction to level design, I've started to add spikes all over the place. They're proving to be a great starting point to let the player get a feel of how he should move in certain situations. Adding the spikes allowed me to focus on the player's hurt state, which I think is very important to nail, as it will be the game's way of telling the player, hey, you got hurt. The effects I've added to emphasize this are a red vignette around the player, a bit of knockback on the player, and a small hit freeze. The impact effect is clearly shown at this moment. Between the knockback and the hit freeze, the game provides the player with a chance to correct their choices and quickly decide their next move. As for the dash, it now works separately from the attack combo and can be used at any moment, at the cost of some stamina. The dash provides some invincibility frames for the player to get around obstacles, as well as generating a hitbox to break stuff and hurt enemies. Another hard decision was to let go of the old enemies. I love them with all my heart, but as I began writing the backstory, they started to lack sense in the game world. Another reason is that they were very hard to maintain and develop, as they had lots of animation states to take into account and they were way too easy to defeat. Since I'm moving further and farther away from the combat elements, it's a decision that helps me focus on what is essential. To replace them, I've created some new enemy concepts that fit the lore much better. They're big stone sentinels that roam the land and will stop at nothing to defeat the player. Some of them will fly, others will shoot stuff, some will do both, but they will all be cold and passive creatures that will hurt the player just by touching them. I'm working hard on studying how to improve how they move and how they fit into the world. I want to make a short video soon showing the little things we can add to make them more juicy. At this point, I'm pretty happy with how the game is looking and feeling. There's still much to do, and sure, I get frustrated at times, especially with the lack of time. But investing even just a little bit of time every day on the game is helping me feel like I'm moving forward. In the next sprint, I'll start to focus heavily on level design, adding more traps and placing enemies, lasers, and bullets everywhere. This way, I'll be able to improve the game's playability. Project management wise, I've been a bit untidy in this last sprint. Not a great start. The tools I'm using to keep track of tasks are Trello and Toggle, but it's a pain to use them separately. I've started considering making a small tool using Godot to join these two functionalities into a single tool, so we'll see how that turns out. That's it for this devlog. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts and consider liking the video and subscribing to follow the channel. Have a great day.